You are living in the most dangerous time in American history.
We won't take a single back step.
Former professional basketball player is now the Republican Party's choice.
Can you imagine Royce White, the U.S. Senate?
White won the endorsement on May 18th with 67% of the vote.
There's nothing that guarantees we win, but I guarantee you if we lose, we will die. Welcome back to another episode of Please Call Me Crazy, brought to you by Free People Radio, powered by our favorite sponsor, TireGet.com. That's TireGet.com. You have to buy tires from somebody. You might as well buy them from us. Help fund the movement. Help support the movement. We believe in the freedom of movement, and that's exactly what the establishment wants to take from you now. I'm your host, Royce White, here in the belly of the beast, Minneapolis, Minnesota, and this is episode 233. Today we have another incredible HEBROES episode with my very, let's say, well-informed co-host, the great Professor Penn, is in the studio with us. Welcome back, Professor Penn. Glad to have you again.
Good day to you. Good evening to everybody.
Yeah. And
Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy
New Year.
And special announcement is this is going to be the last episode HEBROES is on Please Call Me Crazy YouTube channel. If we ever have Professor Penn back again, it won't be HEBROES. It'll just be Professor Penn on Please Call Me Crazy. But the HEBROES podcast will be officially moving to the HEBROES YouTube channel after this episode. So we're going to make sure that we post the next HEBROES episode for you on the HEBROES YouTube channel. You can find that channel in the featured channels on my YouTube channel, on Professor Penn's YouTube channel, as well as Free People Radio YouTube channel, all of which you'll be able to now find and see as you navigate through the YouTube channel of Please Call Me Crazy and Professor Penn podcast. So last HEBROES here on Please Call Me Crazy. The new HEBROES is going to be launching on its own channel.
There's going to be people that hear this last HEBROES things. They're going to freak out.
They're going to think it's the last HEBROES.
No, it's not the last. No, the HEBROES is very important.
It's because just beginning.
It's just beginning because it's really an exploration of the Black and Jewish identities, how they're used by the globalists, and how the Black and Jewish identities interact with each other, and how we can steer ourselves personally, first of all, into a more balanced awareness of how we're going to navigate this globalist ideological soup we find ourselves in. I've become quite angered by the way my Jewish identity is being used by the Republican Party here in Minnesota. For example, just as an example.
Oh, please, proceed. Elaborate.
Well, we went to this State Central Committee meeting, it was already probably close to a month ago, and the Republican Party of Minnesota, under the tutelage of Norm Coleman, former senator from Minnesota, and his functionary Mark Miller, they operate a business called the Republican Jewish Community, the RJC. It's a lobbying organization. It's a political action organization. It's there to promote matters related to the state of Israel. And Mark Miller is a local attorney here in Minneapolis, and he has juice with the Republican Party neocon establishment. And they brought forward a resolution which the members of the State Central Committee voted on, aimed at reaffirming the support that the Republican Party of Minnesota prefers to the state of Israel and to the Jewish people. And while that at first blush seems to be, not that big of a deal, because, it's easy to sell, hey, we're for Israel, because that's the zeitgeist of our times here in the United States of America. There is a lot of, as we all know, a lot of protest about what's going on in Israel, what's going on in the Gaza, a lot of criticism of just the basic support of this forever war in the Middle East, which goes back into the 1800s. But what does the Republican Party of Minnesota really have to do with this issue? I mean, really, what does it really have to do? And the answer is nothing. We have 100 senators in the U.S. Senate that are in lockstep supporting Israel. So the musings of the Republican Party of Minnesota in support of Israel really has nothing to do with supporting Israel. It has some other meaning. And the meaning that it has is they're putting a flag in the ground and they're saying that we're neoconservatives that support this endless war. And come all ye faithful, if that's what you believe. But if you don't believe that, if you're, let's say, in the Democrat Party and you become disaffected with the Democrat and you're seeking a different kind of politics, maybe a politics that's based on peace, well, you're not going to find a home in the Republican Party of Minnesota either. You become disenfranchised politically if your goal is peace. And see, I, as a political activist in the Republican Party, seeking new members, something the Republican Party doesn't seem to be too interested in. You know, if you're trying to sell something, you don't exclude customers by your resolutions. You don't want to condemn, you want to invite. And what they were doing was condemning all the young people that maybe love this country, maybe they're disaffected with neoliberalism, maybe they're disaffected with the lies and the stories that have been told to them by the Democrat. Maybe they're seeking a new kind of politics. But no, you're not going to find that over here in the Republican side of the Uni Party. And this I object to. That's why we're doing HEBROES, to kind of clarify step by step what I think is, or why I'm participating in HEBROES, is because I want to clarify what I think is the Jewish identity and how it's being used, misused, get things restored, try to damp down some of this anti-Semitism, try to remind the audience, the listeners, the viewers, that Judaism and Jews are not a hegemonic force. We don't all believe the same things. We believe very different things.
Yeah.
We don't want to have for example, a bloodletting,
right,
which kills everybody, when in fact many of the community members are actually blameless. Let us focus our antagonism on the people who are leading the country into war. That's my interest.
Well, this issue has not become any less, and I don't see becoming any less charged in the political, in the political world, in the political dialogue from here to Beijing, wherever. I mean, it has a vice grip on the political dialogue in this country and all around the world, and for good reason. I mean, the Judeo-Christian West, the Jewish faith, the Christian faith, the Hebrew Bible, God, Christ. It all. It's all very historically relevant and still very culturally and politically and spiritually relevant today. So it's understandable why it's such a constant in the dialogue. However, we are starting to get to a tipping point where certain geopolitical issues are going to reach literally explosive consequences based on this issue. Not that it hasn't reached war before, but I mean, we're already going through a great political shift in the world, and this issue is going to draw down great contradiction amongst people who would otherwise find themselves to be friends, and they just, allies seem to think differently on this issue. Like for example, and I said this a couple weeks back, and I've been saying this since October 7th happened. What is the path to victory? We talked about the path everybody talked about the path to victory with Russia, Ukraine and Russia, that war. People talked about the path to victory. We talked about the path to victory in politics. we don't really talk about a path to victory that's reasonable or sane or rational when it comes to the Middle East. It would seem that the path to victory is something like, hopefully technology will will advance far enough so that many of the, let's say, traditional or more devout Muslims in the Middle East, at least in leadership, will side with the Western ways and the modernity of Western civilization over their own religious and ideological beliefs. And, in some sense, we're starting to see that take place. Now, it doesn't speak to the rumblings underneath in the streets with the people. And that's why we saw, the Arab Spring and other times in history where Arab leaders who didn't, meet the expectations or standards of their grassroots Muslim constituents or people faced uprising. Whether that uprising was pushed and sort of sponsored by Western civilization for its own purposes or not, there is the potential of that in that region. And we're reaching that tipping point again where, I've said before, I'm a supporter of Israel. I got love for Israel, no doubt. And I think any Christian does hold sentimental a place for Israel. Two things. One is, and I say this as clear as I can, don't tell me you're fighting a holy war if you don't believe in God. I'm not buying that. I don't respect that. And I can't stand next to you with that when the bolt of lightning starts to, rain down from the heavens. If you're fighting a war for geopolitical purposes and military purposes or economic purposes or resource purposes, then that's what you're fighting a war for. Come out and say that and let that be what it is, and we can all decide whether we want to participate in that war or not. But if you say you're fighting a war for God, you better be fighting a war for God.
Well, that's exactly what I was alluding to in my preamble with the Republican Party of Minnesota, because the delegates that voted to affirm that resolution, they're not really clear about what they're voting on or what the purposes of our globalist leaders here in America are doing. But I would have to say, in terms of Israel, the people in Israel, for them, it has been cast and is increasingly cast as a religious struggle. So we can have multiple kinds of frameworks that are both competing and in alliance with each other. But the bottom line is we've got a forever war in the Middle East. And, it goes beyond the Israelis and the Jews. There's another group. They've actually opened up a second front, another displaced group of people that had a country, don't have a country. When the countries were getting handed out in 1913, when the Balfour Declaration was released and the British government said they would support a Jewish homeland in Palestine, there was another group called the Kurds. The Kurds didn't get a country. Kurdistan only exists on the risk board. It does not exist in reality. And we have millions of Kurdish people that are in Turkey, they're in Syria, they're in Iraq and Iran, and they're clamoring for a country, and they've been disenfranchised, and they have the same dynamics going on with that Kurdish community now, which is tearing up 4 countries. There's 4 countries. So somehow or another, which I think I'm pretty clear about that somehow or another, we've got 1 billion people in the Middle East region that have been subsumed in tribal conflict. And I don't think there's anything accidental about that tribal conflict. I think it has been created with the express purpose of extracting resources and maintaining easy access to the Red Sea and the Suez Canal so that the Western powers, the globalists, the Anglo-Saxon cartel, as Vladimir Putin refers to our leadership, can very quickly extract ill-gotten gains from Asia and bring them back to the mother country. That's how this whole thing got started. I was on the Professor Penn podcast this past Thursday night, January 2nd. I spent about a half hour talking about a famine that is now well underway, gripping the people of the Sudan. And there were 7 countries that the neocons under George W. identified for and targeted for regime change. That was Iraq and Iran and Syria and Lebanon and Somalia and the Sudan and Libya. And if we look at what's happened since George W., Libya, its leader, Muammar Gaddafi, was killed quite memorably in the streets. That was a war, civil war started under the reign of Nobel Peace Prize winner Barack Obama, a civil war managed by Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. And now Libya is a failed state with numerous warring parties, with warlords. It's good for billions of dollars of arms sales every year. And no different now than Syria. Syria has the same thing, another failed state where Bashar al-Assad was deposed in a civil war that started again under the Barack Obama reign with Hillary Clinton presiding. We had the Iraq war under George W. I mean, all these different places now, Sudan and Somalia, both failed states, both states subsumed in civil war, violence, famine, mass migration. It's just crazy what has happened. And these policies have emanated in the short term out of the George W. Bush and Barack Obama presidencies, what we call the deep state. These policies have not been modified. And in the Sudan, Royce, I got to tell you, I spent a lot of time working on the Sudan. We're arming both sides. We, the people, are arming both sides of that civil war. And there's tens of thousands of people killed, millions of people at risk for death by famine. And we, the people, we, the American people, our tax dollars are arming both sides, both combatants are on our payroll. No different than this al-Jolani, that's the new president of Syria, formerly the leader of al-Qaeda in Syria. Now he's been rebranded. He's got a new name, al-Shara. They've changed his name, He's got hey, Papa's got a brand new bag. I'm no longer al-Qaeda. I'm now the West's guy in Damascus. So when you see this kind of intervention, my question is to the audience and for us to discuss, what gave us the right to intervene into these countries' affairs to the extent that these countries have been destroyed?
Yeah.
Where is our right when you talk about a holy war? Is there anything holy in this process that you see?
Yeah, well, it's the what did they call it? The what was it called earlier in the phrase? The term is escaping me.
The Great Game?
Manifest destiny.
I thought that just applied to the United States of America. So what you're saying,
yeah,
it's a global phenomenon.
Well, it would appear so, wouldn't it? Yeah.
That's a very horrifying statement.
Well, and to go back to what I was saying earlier, I just think there is no path of it. Like let's take this war with Iran, and it's on the way. I mean, it's coming. The Iranians can either capitulate and bend the knee, which in many respects they have continued to show that they're not as tough as they say. I mean, everybody can say death to the West when those aircraft carriers roll into the Mediterranean. People have a way of calming down, but what Russia showed with the ICBMs, and I want to talk to you about the ICBMs. I want to talk a little bit about this Tesla bombing over the hour. I want to talk about the throwdown with Elon Musk and Bannon. So we got a good cover, a good amount of ground to cover. But with what Russia showed in terms of capacity with the hypersonic ICBMs, it's not far stretched to think that Russia could actually try to galvanize here all of America's or the West's enemies and arm them seriously this time. Like, obviously, I mean, let's put it this way. Somebody's lying here, okay? Either Iran and Russia and China are all in on this access of the Iron Triangle together, or they're not. And if they are, and if we're going to say that Russia has been using Iran as a proxy this entire time, then what? Russia doesn't trust Iran with the highest level of missiles because what, they think Iran will use them on them. Obviously, you don't have to give Iran more missiles than you would hold yourself. That doesn't seem to square. So if Russia is sending troops in or military equipment in to back up Syria, to back up Iran, to back up all these other proxy countries in the Middle East, but they're holding back on giving them the weapons that they would need for, sort of a tactical defeat, then somebody's lying here. And my thing is, again, every time we get to this point, we're on the brink of world war. I said this since the first HEBROES we had, and we started talking about, the prospect of nuclear war and whatnot. I started saying, something just doesn't feel right. I mean, every time they start talking about nuclear war and mutually assured destruction, I get in theory that our leaders are obviously naive and obnoxious and kind of crazy, right? I mean, they're crazy. At least
you mean the actors that we elect,
right? Yeah, they're
the ones
crazy.
we see.
They're crazy. They're crazy as shit. At least in the way that they talk about war. I mean, when Victoria Nuland goes, victory is to reclaim every territory that Russia has taken from Ukraine, including Crimea. She's fucking crazy, right? But I start to think that even that's propaganda. I mean, there's just something in the back of my mind that goes, either these people have a profound sense of temperance and reservation, or they're all in on this thing together. And there is a theater about war and geopolitical conflict that's going on that benefits whatever number of, litany of special interests at the time, or we are on the brink of it right now. And when it goes bad really fast. And if we want to go to war with Iran, we could do it. The bomb runs in Iran are not as easy as everybody thinks. I mean, we haven't rolled out any hypersonic ICBMs. Maybe we have them. I'm not sure. But the bomb runs in Iran aren't as easy as people think. And let's say we bomb Iran. Let's say we kill the Iranian regime. Iran is 2 to 3 times bigger than Iraq was at the time when Iraq fell. And there's no reason to believe that the Iraqis are any more radicalized than the Iranians. In fact, I'd say it's the opposite. I would venture to guess that the Iranians are more ideologically and religiously radicalized than the Iraqis were, right? Because the West has spent so much time in Iraq kind of, stewing the pot for their own Western agenda. The Iranians, under the Ayatollah, since the Ayatollah has risen, has become the sort of axis of Islamic caliphate, right? So if you kill the Iranian leadership and you cast 90 million, let's take a conservative number, let's just say it's 3 million Iranians out of the 90 million population into the diaspora, what then? What do we do then?
I have a plan.
Okay, let me hear it.
I think this is a possible plan. Possible. If you say, did I hear you say everybody's in on it together? Maybe. Could be they're all in on it together. Didn't you just say that?
Well, at some level, they certainly are.
Well, how about this for a plan?
It's certainly not, let's say this, it's certainly not the war of old where, we're a neighboring village, kingdom, city-state. We're going to roll in the cover of night. And if we can breach your walls, we're going to kill
everybody.
We're going to rape the, women, and we're going to take the children hostage, and we're going to kill, all the teenage boys to make sure that there's no
comebacks,
no near revenge. Yeah. So we definitely aren't rolling like that. Warfare is much different than that. And I said
in the Middle East, though, there's some shades of that going on in the Middle East right now. For example, in Syria, this HTS group has taken over the country, and there's a lot of minority groups there. And El Jolani, now rebranded as El Sharaa, the new president of the country, said, hey, we're multicultural. He even said he was going to reopen the synagogue in Damascus.
Yeah.
I don't believe him. I think out in the countryside, they're killing all the Alawites, all the Druze. I don't think it's changed very much when the cameras aren't rolling. When the cameras are on, hey, we're all Western, because that's where the money's coming from. But I think one of the things that could happen to Iran, I've thought a lot about this. What is the nature of this iron triangle? I mean, what is the nature of our relationship with France, for example? I mean, these alliances they're not friendships. These are countries, after all. It's about mutual benefit. So what are the Russians really getting from the Chinese? Who's really driving the ship here? I could see very easily. And I noticed this when those aforementioned aircraft carriers steamed into the Mediterranean.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, the Iron Triangle got a little noodly, turned into the noodle triangle.
A little soft there.
Got a little soft in the knees because you didn't see the Russians jump and said, "You go, we got your back." That's not what happened. The back down happened. The quick back down.
Yeah, but are they waiting? See this, and this is where things get a little dicey. And there's the short game, and then there's the long game. And it's like, hey, we got an 82-game season plus the playoffs. There's like, hey, I'm throwing LeBron James out there for lack of a better example. Okay, I know people are going to lose their minds and say LeBron James. Guy's a great basketball player. Didn't show you last night seven threes, and he's shooting the ball better than he ever has in his entire career, which is scary. 6'9.5", 270 pounds, freakiest athletic body maybe in the history of sports. Developing a consistent three-point shot. Oof, might play until he's 48, 50. I don't know. Guy's unbelievable. Sellout, China, knows exactly what's going on, will never speak the truth. That's condemnable. But I'm just giving an example. You throw him out on game one, you win game one. But can he sustain by game 50, game 80, and then 3 series into the playoffs into game 7? And the narrative is tilting against us. And this is why what Steve has done, it can't even really be put into words. You can't put a number on it. It's unquantifiable what he's done. Because we all in the conservative movement, the MAGA movement, the Patriot movement, the Republican Party, whatever you want to call it, the conservative right of American politics, we all like to fancy, ourselves this vanguard of Western civilization and this idea that America's great. All the rest of the world should look at us with praise and admiration and
envy
and envy and we're great. We are that we're tough shit. We're hot shit. It's great to live here. This is the greatest country on earth. And in many regards, it is the greatest country on earth. But how we became the greatest country on earth is certainly up for debate. And how we became the greatest country on earth is going to be debated in the annals of these places that have animosity towards us. I mean, they're not going to overlook it. And they're going to continue to use it as fuel. And that's what's happening right now, whether it's China, whether it's Russia, whether it's India, whether it's the Middle East. Whether it's the countries in South America, what do you think the cartels are saying, behind closed doors? Oh, America's great. It's a great country they got up there. No, they're saying we're going to give those white Western elite gringos cocaine until their hearts explode. And who gives a shit, right? Because, there's a part of America's rise that was predicated on
manifest destiny.
And
there you go.
So what I'm saying is, yeah, the aircraft carriers are great, and the Iron Triangle would appear to have backed down, but in actuality, what Russia showed with these hypersonic ICBMs is maybe Russia has a profound sense of playing the long game. We know China does. We know China won't actually throw down until they can deliver what they believe is a decisive, victorious blow, because that's just how the Chinese roll. They're not gonna go halfway. They're not gonna get into a shootout just to as a pissing contest. When they go for defeat, they're gonna go for a decisive blow. It's gonna be definitive, in their mind. So I know China can play the long game. We don't think we kind of show Russian culture and Russians, like when we depict the Russian mob or Russian warlords, or arms merchants. We kind of depict them as these irrational, impulsive, sort of emotional, spur of the moment actors. But it might be that Russia is playing a long game too. And if they're playing the long game, they are letting us show ourselves as children. We are kind of showing ourselves to be gunslinging toddlers on the world stage, and they're doing it, and they're letting us show it for the entire world to see. See, we think we're playing a game of who's got the bigger, badder army. We're going to roll the aircraft carriers in, but all we're showing everybody else is here comes the bully again, right? And that bully show up enough times, before you know it, all the kids on the yard, they get fed up with the shit. They sharpen those pencils up, or they hit recess. They go to that sharpener and they stick those, and they're getting those pencils sharpened. Before you know it, you got 17 kids jumping that bully and they're poking his lungs with those pencils. That's a violent, gory, and it doesn't often happen, but you know what I'm saying? Eventually the bully has to face the masses. And it just seems like an improper strategy for us to think we're just going to progress technology and sort of this baseline of general wealth against the backdrop of human history. We're going to make it good enough, like Yuval Noah Harari said, spokesperson of the entire globalist Western ethos. We're going to make it good enough so all these nations see it more beneficial to roll with us rather than fight against us. And I just don't think that's going to work.
That's part of the limits of the World Economic Forum raison d'etre, for lack of a better term, in the sense that Yuval Noah Harari is pitching a postmodern, post-religious, post-faith, scientific-based worldview, which comes into direct conflict with both the Russian and the Iranian current zeitgeist, which both of those countries are hearkening back to 1,000 years of religious history as their organizing principle. China's a little different.
Yeah.
China's in that Harari kind of scientific, Marxist, there is no God, there is no faith, materialist worldview. So within that iron triangle, there is not an ideological framework that's shared amongst the participants, and those people know that.
Yeah, but the shared ideological framework is fuck the West.
That's
a pretty profound incentive.
What is that one? The enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Right.
But that is not
me and my brother against my cousin, me and my cousin against a stranger.
That's correct.
Yeah.
But it's not really the kind of solidarity that.
How solid do you think it needs to be in order for it to be a real threat to us? That's the question. The question isn't how solid are they in the final analysis. The question is how solid does it need to be for us to be in trouble?
Well, let me tell you, on Chinese television right now, there's a huge groundswell of sentiment that in this moment of weakness where Russia is caught up fighting in the Ukraine, the Chinese people, are advocating the reoccupation of Chinese territories lost to the Russians at the end of World War II. So, if I was writing a history book, my history book would say the Chinese, because the best victory from the Chinese perspective, and the Chinese are a very ancient culture.
Yeah.
They may not believe in God, but they do believe in the natural way.
They believe in Chinese.
They do. That is their religion.
Yes, it is.
And they would love to see a war fought where they won in a bloodless battle. That's high skill. See, one of the things when you say we're the bully on the block, the bully generally is a little clumsy. The bully. When the bully rolls into the gym, talking smack and pushing people around, it's not very sensitive. Like somebody could come up next to him and just trip him, and he wouldn't even know he was tripped. That's the way the Chinese are rolling. So I could see a scenario myself. And I know that we got two different group of globalists here in our country. One group that's very down with sharing power with the Chinese. And another group that's coming into power on January 20th when they say, let's make America great again. They mean, yes, there's globalism. We're just running the show. I'm just coming down. The way I'm seeing the cards come off the deck, it's looking like that to me more and more. Like we're going to make some concessions to these religious nationalists. We're going to do some things that need to be done, make the country a little bit more favorable for the citizens. But really, when we talk about great, let's bomb the Iranians to shit and then let the Chinese rebuild it and let them have all the oil, and we're friends with the Chinese again, for example. There's a lot of plays that could get made in the next 4 to 8 years that would be rather shocking. Rather shocking.
Wouldn't shock me. Might shock some people. I wouldn't be shocked one bit. Yeah.
To find out that we're actually allied with the Chinese is
No,
Henry,
we are not. Well, what you mean we?
What you mean we?
Hey, we no, don't trust the French. And they know we. What is clear, and the visa, the H-1B visa issue is
kind of a tale, wasn't it?
Is a big tale. It's not kind of. It's a tale. It's a telltale. I mean, it's as big of a tale as you can.
No, there's a bigger tale.
Okay,
there is a bigger tale.
What's the bigger one?
When President-elect Trump, we still have 17 days to go, and with all of the Sturm und Drang, hey, could be a very potent 17 days. But he came out and he said, hey, BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and all your associated familiars. If you all think you're going to come up with your own currency, proceed. But you'll be paying 100% border tax if you want access to the United States of America, the number one consumer market on planet Earth.
Oh, amen to that.
So you want to talk about a tale. That tale is...
No, I like that. That's not the same tale.
Oh, yes, it is, because what he's saying is, I am going to defend the U.S. dollar as the world's reserve currency. That's what he's saying.
Yeah. I don't read that the same way.
Well, how do you read it then?
I read that as, we can do business, but you're going to pay. And if you're going to pay America first. And if by paying America first, it's going to trickle down to the citizens. That's
what he's saying is that our primary export is those greenbacks, and our moneyed class, our Wall Street class, because that is the world reserve currency. They make a little bit on everything that goes down everywhere, every day, all the time.
I know.
So
I know.
He's defending that.
Yeah, but I don't really think. Well,
yes, he did. He did.
Yeah, but it's not the same as the visas. The visa is a direct strike against the American working class. I mean, that it doesn't get no more globalist than the visas. To say that we need these tech workers from India.
Oh, they're coming in from China too.
Well, yeah, from everywhere.
Everywhere.
Yeah, we need all of these tech workers because American citizens aren't skilled enough, or aren't educated enough, aren't smart enough, or don't have the desire, the will, or the aptitude to do these jobs. Is absolutely a lie. It's ridiculous. And even if it happened to be true, then the onus would be on the next administration and any real leader of the American people to lead us into a place where
we got our own people.
That's the whole point. If it's no good to fortify your supply chains in a more nationalist way, if all the workers come from somewhere else. I mean, that's the same issue.
It's a giant program of government dependency.
That's right.
And I'm going to share with you why I think that is, because I've actually sponsored H-1B visas. I have done it. So I know what the program is. I know it very well. First of all, you have to pay the H-1B visa holder that works for you, and I've had several that I've sponsored and have worked for me. You have to pay them a wage which is commensurate with hiring an American citizen. So the argument that it's about saving money, I don't really think that's what's driving it. What's driving it for me, if you have a room full of H-1B visa holders working for you, there's no union organizing. There's no complaining. There's no talk back. There's a bunch of people working their ass off. First of all, they're not even from here. They don't even have any connections in the community.
They're definitely getting it's definitely cheaper, though.
It's cheaper marginally, but in terms...
pretty big margin when you're Tesla. Margin equals a lot.
The real benefit is you've got a compliant workforce.
Right.
And the companies that do it, because they know they're going for compliant, they're also dependent on the government.
It's a way to circumvent free speech.
It's a way to circumvent any kind of dissent by the companies
Right.
or the workers.
Right.
It's a government program. It's like a 501c3 church. It's the same idea, just a little different.
Yeah.
We're going to put you all on the payroll.
Right.
We're going to let you come into the oasis. Come on in. Come on in. Take your sandals off. Sit for a while. Could we bring you some hummus? Would you like some pita bread? That kind of a thing.
Yeah.
That kind of a thing. It gets people compliant. And that is a problem because we don't have a culture. We have a adversarial culture. Our culture only works, our political system only works when people are engaged and are striving with each other. That's what works. That's what makes America great. You want to make America great again? We need free speech. We need conflict. There's no conflict from an H-1B visa holder. All you hear from them is, yes, sir. I mean, these people disappear into their work areas. We don't see them again. I don't like this. I don't like it. We want to have.
Yeah, but some of these visas aren't even for work. Let's just be honest. I mean, some of it's a workaround for illegal immigration, chain immigration. Some of these visas, you got male strippers from Dubai. And look, I'm not saying being a male entertainer isn't actual work, but come on. I mean, the point of the matter is, I get what you're saying. We seem to have let's do globalism, America first.
Right.
Let's do America first globalism. It ain't gonna work. It ain't gonna work. And that's why what Steve is doing and what Steve has done, it can't even. I think there's a part of this movement that still can't appreciate Steve because of this very, MO that he has. Is his MO was the first one to say, wait a second, this is a great country. It was built on a great foundation and great ideas. There's greatness in it. There's greatness to it. There's greatness that's been achieved. But right now we're reaching a bottleneck where, like he said in American Dharma, if we don't spread some of this money around, if we don't find a way to spread some of this money around, there's a revolution coming. That's just it. There is a revolution coming if we don't spread some of this money. And a huge portion of this Republican, party, this Republican constituency, they don't want to hear that. They don't want. I mean, it's crazy to think. And then the flip side of the coin, you could say, hey, well, maybe being a good American. I was thinking about this the other day, like the American dream. What is the American dream? The American dream is, it used to be that you could go from being nothing to being everything, right? You could go from being underclass, poor, none of the resources or advantages, of the high society, and you could work your way into owning a Tesla, for example. Now, that wasn't Elon Musk's journey, but theoretically you could do it. Much harder than they make it seem in reality, because you got to have a bank relationship. You got to get a loan. You got to have collateral. There's things that got to happen along, or somebody just has to believe in you and say, hey, I'll put $1 million into you, right? I mean, that doesn't just happen. Those are anomalous circumstances, but it is possible. And that was the American dream. But then somewhere in there, the American dream more so was the baseline prosperity of the American citizen, the average American citizen, is tempered to a quality of life and an expectation of life that is humble, reasonable, and yet still better than most of the other people in the world. Like, hey, I got a basic house that I have a mortgage on that I'm going to own. I have a wife. I have some kids. I got a fence. I got a retirement plan. I save a little money. I go on vacation once a year, do some pictures. I'm good on holidays. We have good Christmas and Thanksgiving. And
I can worship as I please.
I can worship so that became the American dream.
The state doesn't mess with me.
That became the American dream somewhere in there. And I don't think we did well to kind of distinguish when that shift happened. I still think some people think of the American dream as, I could own $1 trillion company. It's like, well, no, actually you can't.
Well, actually, just to clarify
but
this.
you can have a decent life and the whole reason I brought that up is when Steve says we have to start spreading some of that money around, the point is that the globalists have made it almost impossible to live a nice, decent, humble life without being spread too thin financially. And that's where we have to rein it in. Then we can do American first globalism. And I say that with the utmost hesitancy because the word globalism in and of itself on face value is repugnant to me. But I understand there's going to be some global cooperation because technology's gotten to a point where everybody is connected. So, we're not going to, there's really going to be no genuine isolation anymore unless technology just completely falls or is pulled, is destroyed, right? So there's going to be global cooperation. But the global elites, especially here in the West, especially for American citizens, have rigged the game so bad that not the American dream of me becoming a trillionaire in one generation, but the American dream of just being able to have a family, just being able to raise kids. It's so expensive now to just raise a child that you almost don't want to have children. There are people making the choice not to have, and I'm not talking about women and black women in communities who are getting abortions, although that is part of that too. But I'm talking about regular, everyday, average Americans who go to college and are actually college educated, walking around with a degree and a reasonable job. They're making the decision that they don't want to have a child because of the financial burden. So in that way, our elites, our economic elites, have actually destroyed the most simplest form of the American dream, not the high end. And that's what these Republicans and conservatives and even the Elon Musk got to get through their head is we have to restore that American dream, the simple version, the short version. It's like, can you even have a savings? If you save right now, you're a sucker. There are no pensions. I mean,
But you have 53% of the population
who believe there are pensions.
Well, they're in the 401k, IRA, MA.
Until they're not.
Well, they are right now.
Yeah.
And they're looking at the pixels on their phone. Many of the people that are watching us tonight have IRAs, have 401ks, and they're benefiting from the financialization.
And do you think that they could continue to print money into infinity to support the retirement of? So is the whole scam? Is the whole global scam to support just to keep up the fugazi of the American pensions? As long as the boomers who have pensions are well off or taken care of or paid up until they die, then this whole thing is okay? I mean, is that what it's come to? Is that what the American identity is?
That's what the H-1B visa program is.
I
We're
know.
putting you on the payroll.
I know. That's what
You're
I'm
on
saying.
the payroll. 501c3
Milton
churches
Friedman's rolling
on
in his
the payroll.
grave. That's what I'm saying. And Elon Musk has the audacity to repost Milton Friedman. I don't think he gets the fundamental of a guy like Milton Friedman, what he's saying. When everybody's on the government payroll, it is not free market enterprise. It's not a free market. This is not capitalism.
It's theater.
It's feudal. It's neo-feudalism. And what Steve said about Elon is 100% spot on. The entire tech industry and the Visa program is a sort of techno-feudalism. So, and if Tesla's going to be the biggest dog in the yard, or it's going to be, a SpaceX or whatever it is, and it's all going to be based on government subsidies, and then everybody's going to be working for SpaceX or Tesla or driving one until the robots do it for us. That is not a free market capitalist society.
It's not a free society.
It's definitely not free, but it's not capitalism. It's techno-feudalism. And I've been saying it for about a year now, but this is the real modus operandi of this establishment. This is them trying to take your freedom of movement, whether you realize it or not. Socioeconomic mobility as well, but actual movement. It's just you.
Your emotional movement also. That's
your government cannot be the biggest employer.
It is
of your people. It cannot be. As soon as everybody's on the payroll, then there's no sort of spiritual fundamental incentive to bring a rightful criticism to ensure the government should shut down when they try and raise a debt ceiling that they shouldn't raise. Of course they shouldn't raise the debt ceiling, but nobody can say it with a full throat because too many people getting checks from the government, right? All the people on disability, all the people on this or that. I mean, everybody's, on the take. And Steve is the one brave enough to say, hey, I don't care how many of you people getting government checks and pensions, 401k retirement. I don't care. Not one more penny. And everybody's like, well, yeah, you're right. We spend too much in theory. But, we got to get our 401k checks and we got to defend Israel. It's like, All right, guys, then you're not really Republicans. Or at least you're not the Republicans you claim to be.
Or you don't want to self-govern.
You can't.
Well, that's the argument.
Right.
It's too far gone.
Right.
How are we going to walk back? Well, then if we're going to give up the idea of self-governance, we're giving up the idea of the republic.
Of freedom.
Right.
Right.
And that's what we're doing at Free People Radio. That's why we call it Free People Radio.
That's exactly why.
Because there are still some holdover people that want to self-govern. I want to self-govern. And, that whole self-governance idea, it's such a big subject. It's whatever each listener and viewer can do to increase their independence, whatever it is. And what these people are doing is they just put more and more opportunities for us to give up our independence.
Right.
Boy, I really object to it. But, I go back to the 50s. So, I've watched this whole thing build up over time. And I look at it and I talk to people and I recognize what shocks me. People are okay with it. Like they're okay with it.
You think they understand it?
No.
They don't get it.
They don't get it at all. That's why we're doing the podcast.
But at a spiritual level, do you think, do you track, do you square that at a spiritual level people have given over to
materialism
and Satan in a way where even if they don't get it, consciously, a subconscious spiritual level, the reason why they're okay with it is because they have no faith?
Well, we just had this conversation in the car.
But the other people would say the alternative. Karl Marx, for example, would say, oh, no, you Christians are stupid. The reason why they gave you Christianity is so that you can be okay with being poor and being subjects and serfs.
And I've made this comment before. Mm-hmm. These people are very hateful. At least the original feudalists, like the King of France.
The monarchs. Yeah.
The monarchs. They at least let you have Catholicism.
At least let you have some God.
You could have a future
right.
after this life.
Right.
You go to heaven. Do what we tell you to do. You go to heaven. These people, man, they got you on both ends. You can't have any material goods, and there's no spiritual life. They're eliminating free will. That's what their game is. Right. These people are radically satanic. I'm just making that comment in front of everybody. I don't normally stay in that frame because if you stay in that frame, people start calling you names. But here I'm going to go on and say, to me, it's just it's religious, anti-religious. You brought up Marx. People say it's all about economics. I don't think so. I think that was a cover story. I think Marx's major thrust was what you just alluded to, that religion is the opiate of the masses. There is no God, and it's fed to people to control them. Boy, these people are mean. You want to talk about mean? Mean. You're not going to leave me anything. I'm not going to have any mobility. I'm not going to have any net worth. I'm not going to have possessions. I'm going to be happy, but I'm not going to own anything. I'm not even going to have a spiritual life.
Yeah.
What they're saying is your happiness comes from what? Video games.
And drugs. Porn. Robots.
Seems to be working.
What do you think? And first I want to say, what do you make of this? Did you see the Cybertruck Tesla bomb in front of the Trump Tower?
I did.
And now they're saying it's an active military guy who did it.
Yes.
Which is, drawing all kinds of conspiracy theory. This guy supposedly was skilled enough that if he really wanted to do some damage or bomb something, he could have blew up the entire building because he had that type of know-how. I don't know if that's necessarily true or not, but that's just some of the theory that I saw. But they said that he had a bunch of patriotic stuff on his social media, that he had been a big Trump supporter. Is this a turning of a tide from the Trump base that sees some of these moves with Elon Musk and the Speaker Johnson and maybe Israel, for example, is some of the MAGA base kind of becoming disgruntled with Donald Trump? No. Okay. What do you take of it? What do you make of this?
Well, of course, I don't have an 8x10 glossy, so I can only talk about possibilities. But what my leading possibility in my own worldview is, conspiracy theory and conspiracy fact are getting kind of blended together. These people, we just said the bully's a little bit clumsy. I don't think they care. I think people are so disengaged and so, what did you call it? Taking their politics with their French fries, I think is your line.
Yeah.
I don't think people are really tracking. And they put this stuff out there and it's just supposed to drive you nuts. It's like the The guy that killed a bunch of German Christmas revelers in a similar car attack that was in a city in Germany about 2 weeks ago. And he ran over and killed a bunch of people. He was a Saudi, and they framed him out as a supporter of Alternative for Deutschland. That he was which is kind of the German equivalent of the Trump movement. They said he was a right-wing, anti-religious, nationalist. And it just doesn't make any sense. It's not supposed to make any sense. Right now, we've entered a period of what I would call crazy-making behavior. If they can make it so hard for people to make sense of any of these movements and of any of these actions, they're just going to disengage. People will disengage. In the absence of facts, in the absence of coherence, in the presence of contradiction, people will, generally speaking, just give up and say, I can't figure it out. I'm going to go live my life. Disengagement is very important to the ruling class right now because they know that the only way real change will be implemented in this country, the only way the money is going to get spread around is if you, the viewer and the listener, get involved in your local political activity and enforce your will in the process.
Yeah.
But they don't want that. They want you to feel helpless, hopeless, and confused.
Yeah.
So do I think the guy is a disaffected Trump supporter? No. I think they're just driving people nuts. I think he's an MK Ultra. He shot himself in the head before the truck went off is what I... Did you hear that today, that he committed suicide?
Yeah, I heard that.
How did the truck get detonated?
Well,
he shot himself.
I mean, the real issue is, I mean, this is spooky stuff to begin with, and who knows? I mean, when who knows?
Right.
I mean, when they say a guy shot himself, I mean, that's convenient. That's always a convenient.
How do we
way.
even know anything?
That's always a convenient way to cut out a patsy in a conspiracy. Is
like they shot the guy
he shot himself.
The guy in Butler, Pennsylvania.
Maybe he did shoot himself. It's not like people aren't committing suicide. I mean, I get it. That's happening, and people are just generally going crazy, losing their mind because, like Steve said, not only are we not doing a good enough job spreading around the wealth, we're not doing a good enough job of spreading around meaning and philosophical currency and fruit and a sort of sense of something for people to strive for that is bigger than materialism, right? There are pursuits that don't bring you money that are meaningful enough to sustain you throughout your life. And we've almost shamed that. I mean, that's kind of the thing with bastard children, right? It's like if you're a bastard child, you're kind of like, what's the point of you? That's where the real sacrilege comes in from the outset, and that just bleeds into everything where people start to believe it. They start to buy it because you live in a society with other people where other people buy it. And it's like, well, my life doesn't have much meaning, or, to get to the point where you want to blow your own, shoot yourself. First of all, what is the point of this? When I look at it, I just go, this is, what is the point of this? Why blow up a truck in front of the Trump hotel? For what reason? What shooting the CEO, although I think it's absolutely detestable and sort of retarded in its own right, I get the thought process, right? And I told people that was going to happen. And then they shot there's another one who got shot, or there's another CEO you saw who got attacked in his home.
I didn't see that.
Yeah, no, some guy ran into some billionaire or some tech guy's home, and he was having like a little get-together. And he started letting off shots and shot like 3-4 people, I think, in the house.
When was this?
This is recently. Maybe I'm watching some, bogus clip, but I'm pretty sure this just happened in the last week or two. There was some guy, he was in a house and he was having like a little, get-together party, and there's footage, security footage, and, they're in there kind of dancing and kind of just hanging out, partying, and a guy comes through and starts shooting. I don't know how many people he killed, who he shot, but it's going to start happening. Like that dark Marxism is coming, right? That sort of true, genuine rebel Marxism We're not connected to the corporations. We should have never trusted the Pfizers. We should have never trusted the DNC. We should have never trusted the Bill and Hillary Clinton Foundation. We should have never associated with these people. We knew that they were greedy capitalists the entire time. They didn't believe in identity and equity and any of that. That's coming. But what does this do? Blowing a truck up in front of a hotel. What does that do? What is the point of it? It's too stupid to be MK Ultra, in my opinion.
Well, maybe it's the opening act of
usually an MK Ultra, in my opinion. If you got an MK Ultra conspiracy, there's going to be some tangible. There's going to be some tangible outcome, right? Like, okay, if we say Sirhan, MK Ultra, if we say Oswald or the two from the grassy knoll, and this is MK, that makes sense because what Kennedy and Bobby were doing had global consequences for many generations. Martin Luther King, MK, okay, I got it. Martin Luther King, transformative, powerful figure. Malcolm X, another one. MK Ultra, a Cybertruck in front of Trump Hotel, doesn't even kill anybody? For what? What's the point?
Maybe he failed in his mission.
Okay.
We don't know. But it's just another marker of violence as we go through these last 17 days towards the inauguration. That attack in New Orleans was pretty effective. That was a pretty big body count there. And there's going to be more of this running people over with vehicles. Boy, they're doing that in Europe all the time. So we're entering a period of political violence. You know, one of my favorite Bob Marley songs, Political Violence Fills Your City. We're there. We're there, and we're going to have to deal with it. And, of course, what will happen? Royce, what's going to happen if political violence fills our cities? What's going to be the governmental response?
Martial law.
Cessation of freedom.
Absolutely. The freedom of movement will come to a screeching halt.
Right. And we're gonna be happy with it. Most of our
we're going to beg for it.
Our conservatives.
They're going to beg for it.
Right.
So that's the point. And we've said it before, and I'll say it again. I saw a video, you been showing me from my Wednesday show. I saw a video that really, really, rubbed me the wrong way. It was a clip. It was a clip where two sheriffs, it looked like two cops, two law enforcement officers, came to knock on a woman's door at her house, told her she was under arrest. Throughout the video, you could make out that they were placing her under arrest for her child walking down the street or around the corner or however far it was to a store by themselves. Okay? And they were saying that this is reckless endangerment. They were arresting her for recklessly endangering a child for allowing them to walk to a store by themselves. Now, I grew up in a neighborhood where by 10 years old, we were running the streets all day long. I mean, we were just, that's just kind of how it was. But I also grew up with aunts and uncles and elders in the community that recalled the time where you weren't even allowed to come in the house until the streetlights came on in some families. Like if you came in the house, if you came in the house before the streetlights came on, people look at you like you're weird. Your grandma and grandpa, blah, blah. What are you doing in here? Why are you out there playing? Go get yourself some business. Go play. Go do something. Now, I realize we live in a much more dangerous time and child trafficking is crazy. And, to be honest, I wouldn't let my 10-year-old daughter or son roam on down to the store by themselves either. Personally, that's just a personal choice because to me, a child is too precious a treasure to lose just on something that's so insignificant. But as a general principle, American citizens should be able to decide when their children, take on as much responsibility as that parent thinks is appropriate. And going to a store, although it wouldn't be my choice, is nowhere near egregious enough to warrant law enforcement intervention, arrests, detainment, right? And it doesn't have to do with what we're talking about, martial law, but it's the predicate. And these small sort of, unassuming, these are the red flags that should be going up before you know it, the martial law. And there are plenty of people who look at it and go, we support the cops. We support law enforcement. Tom Emmer, a good way to draw applause from a Republican crowd anywhere in the country is to get up in front of a microphone, get up in front of an audience and say, we support the police. We
stand up if you're a policeman or ex-military or
yes.
first responder,
Yeah.
and you go to these conventions, and about 20% of the delegate bodies are ex-military, police, first responders. That's a pretty good lobby for the status quo. 20%, that's your locked block right there of neocon conservative politics. And there's nothing, I don't want to transmit any disrespect. I have respect. And it's the lockstep of the viewpoint that I have a problem with. And I don't like their identity being used either. It seems like nobody walked into a Republican Party event and said, hey, if you're a father, please stand up so we can give you some applause.
Have you ever heard that?
No.
Not once.
Not one time.
Oh, let's talk about that. See, now there is an IQ point from the great Professor Penn. Not once in my 2.5 or so years of being in the Republican Party, being a part of Republican Party politics, not once have I ever been in a Republican Party event, caucus, convention, party, a little get together. Not once have I heard a speaker get up and say, if you're a father in the room, stand up. We'd like to give you some applause. Yet everybody talks about the nuclear family. Oh, see, this is getting right down to the
scam.
Because it's just what? Assume that if you're a father, you do what fathers do. Even that's a scam. I mean, even that's kind of a consequence of a more feminist-led American ideology, politically, culturally, socially. It's like, fathers do the hard work without any praise or respect or appreciation. And cautionary tale to a lot of you women out there, I showed a clip where this woman, definitely appeared to be a white liberal woman, was freaking out, and she was basically exposing her uncles and her father and the other males in her family who had taken this hunting trip yearly, and they brought her now ex-husband on the trip. And supposedly the one time he goes on the trip with him, when he came back, he tried to cheat on her, and she's freaking out saying, all of you were in on, my husband or my ex-husband trying to cheat, and now I'm outing all of you, and, blah, 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 blah. And I just said, on the video in response or in reaction to what she was doing, your husband tried to cheat on you because you're insufferable. You're a nightmare. I can tell from this 30-second clip why your husband would cheat on you. In fact, I kind of hope that he did find some peace and cheat on you at some point, because it would seem to be torture to have to be around you. It's torturous for me to listen to this video of you, and I could turn it off when I want. Imagine being stuck with you, 24/7, 365 days a year. But the point is, a cautionary tale to the women out there, even in the Republican Party, is men are not treated well. Men are not treated well in our society, just in general. Men, we are not, husbands, fathers, we are not appreciated.
We're objects of derision.
But yet, and this is what I'm to tie it back into what we're saying. For some reason, we find a special appreciation for police and military men because we're cowards, right? Because they do the dangerous work that we don't have the courage to do. So even our fanboy and appreciation of them is not so much a sacred honor as it is a sort of individual cowardice. And I just don't respect that. I mean, I just, I don't honor that. It's like my boy, Mike Richmond, right? Mike Richmond was a Marine. His fight name is Mike the Marine Richmond. He's local right here. He just won the light heavyweight bare knuckle championship over the last week and a half. And, he did his tours. I think he did some tours in Iraq, a couple of tours in Iraq. He's a serious dude, And I respect his service, I respect that he served. I respect but I respect who he is personally. I know him. I've been in the gym with him. I respect how he carries himself. I respect, you know what I mean? The admiration isn't as, oh, this guy served and that's it's like, yeah, okay.
Well, even within that cohort now, you've got the whole cohort, millions and millions of veterans. They all served, but they all served in different ways. So there is kind of a identity issue amongst veterans. All these identities get used and abused. I want to just go back for the father thing for a second, because you're pushing on a wound when you say that. Because I've raised 5 children, and there is no, there's no thanks for being a dad. Nobody ever looked at you and said, none of my kids have ever looked at me and said, geez, thanks, Dad. I mean, it's just not part of the deal. But they're sure, where we saw that? We saw this, hey, you and I have experienced this together.
Yeah.
Royce and I go, and have done this, we've taken our families together to a Mother's Day buffet. And this spread is fantastic. They got crab legs and prime rib. I mean, it is deluxe. It is such a phenomenal opportunity to celebrate and enjoy, and everybody is honoring the mothers. And then you go back on Father's Day, and it's some scrambled eggs, bacon, and toast. I mean, there's nothing deluxe about it. So even baked into the way the 2 holidays are celebrated, there is an inequity, which, okay, I'm not into fair. I'm into what is. But as raising 5 kids, it's hard to be a dad. It's just really a lot of work. And we sweat. We earn our daily bread by the sweat of our brow. We have to maintain our emotional sensitivity when we're tired, when we're under stress. We're always asked to do things. Like around my house, it's inevitable when I finally lay down, which is seldom, somebody will walk in and say, hey, can you take me here? Can you take me there? A father's work is never done, as a mother's work is never done. But the derision that men are held in right now is painful. It's very, very painful.
Yeah.
And I couldn't have said this 5 years ago. I didn't feel it 5 years ago. And, we've talked about this. It even goes into the family court system.
Right.
I mean, the whole thing is, it is anti-male. I didn't see it even before I met you. I had some misgivings about the way things were going.
Right.
But now hanging around with younger men and recognizing what you're all going through. I have my stepson at home looking at what he's going through. This level of change, we need to have, this is an ideological framework that needs work. Would you not agree with me about this?
Well, I mean, yeah, I would. I think men are under attack. It's just like this whole Me Too culture, right? That Pete Hegseth is going through, and some other people now. It's just, it's almost like it's the highest level witch hunt that we've seen in the history of human civilization. That's what it is. It's if none of us agree with it, none of us think it's fair, but we've created a society that's so broken, we all know that we could fall victim to it, so we do our best to steer clear of any turbulence in that arena, which is at any moment any woman could accuse you of anything, or anybody just in general could come to bring a heavy level of criticism on your failings or shortcomings as a man, and all of the traditional or conventional wisdom about what you should be as a man, and if you fail, or if you stumble, or if you fall, or whatever the case may be, we're all okay with kind of stringing people up on a cross, although we say we don't, we shouldn't, we don't want to. We want men to be more open. We want men to be more emotionally intelligent like women, but men don't have the space to really open up and say how they feel. Men don't have the space to really show, what they're going through. I mean, look at my campaign. Amy Klobuchar, and God bless, she has, she's survived cancer presumably, and she got a husband and all this. I get it. There's that image. But the number one thing they made me out to be unelectable for was having children. It's like the greatest crime against humanity is having a child out of wedlock, let's say. That's the greatest crime against humanity. Not funding a military industrial complex, Not put more money in corrupt politicians' pockets in D.C. like Amy Klobuchar than they can even counterspend. Not turning a blind eye to any one of these, any number of these cultural narratives they spin on primetime television to keep you distracted. None of that is a real crime against humanity. The greatest crime against humanity is having children, bastard children, out of wedlock. I mean, that's the greatest diagnostic of where our society is, and we got to change it. And it is predicated on an anti-male ethos, because even the kids out of wedlock, nobody condemns the mothers. In general, nobody condemns. In fact, the entire system is built to support those mothers, right? I mean, that's a real, measurement of the cultural divide and the sort of double standard is the entire legal system, the entire governmental structure is built to support women who have quote unquote bastard children and to condemn men. It goes, and it's not. I'm not saying it for self-serving purposes. I just happen to experience that particular example, but it does show that the natural order is completely inversed in our society at a cultural level, philosophical, spiritual level. We've inversed the natural order. So it's no wonder we're all over the place with all of these issues. It's hard to call the balls and strikes when you're not living in the natural order.
To talk about that a little bit more, about the natural order is inversed. When you say that, what exactly are you driving at?
The natural order is from God to man and man to woman and child. That's the natural order. We've inversed it. We've taken out the God. We've put woman first and child. And then the man is basically the last.
Unnecessary.
Well, he's necessary so far as he's necessary.
One sperm, and then he's out.
Well, not even that. I mean, he's necessary to build your roads. He's necessary to sit in a factory and manufacture your curling irons.
Until the robots show up.
Until the robots show up. Yeah, and the crazy part is, I said the other day when you heard me say on RAV, when the robots show up, it's going to be the women that are in trouble first. The beta male, sort of psychopathic men that have enough of a psychological determination and sort of obsession to get enough money to be able to buy robots, they're going to be killing women left and right. They're going to be killing people left and right, but they're going to be killing women left and right because, again, what holds tyrants back, what has always held tyrants back, what has always held genocidal maniacs back is that at some level you do need other people in order to maintain power.
You need inventory.
When you don't need that anymore, the genocide is going to get out of control quick, and women are going to be the first stop. Yeah, unless it's women that get control of the robots first, and then you go see man take it. I mean,
it's not a
talk about a perfect man. Imagine when the most self-absorbed, narcissistic of women in our society are in charge of building the robots, and they can build the perfect man. Oh, I'm toast.
You said something I thought was interesting the last time we were on with HEBROES. You said, "Is there anything more crazy than the current group of psychotic people that are on this planet creating artificial intelligence out of their psychosis? How can that have a good ending?" I think that's a very appropriate critique because someone's got to program this stuff. And the people that program these super intelligences, they don't really have it together. They're giving birth to a god, so to speak, their god, but the programming that's creating it is based on the 7 deadly sins. So we've got some very deep structural issues to try to resolve. But it's really, when we talk about it at this level, it can sound overwhelming, but really it's actually quite simple to handle these issues if we're willing as individuals to do it. We just need to self-govern.
Yeah.
I mean, we can make their system really irrelevant just by not participating. Perfect example, Patriot economy. Patriot economy. Everybody's spending money every day. Every day. Put some thought into where that money's getting spent.
Yeah, please.
Who are you spending the money with?
Right.
Are you giving it to organizations that are anti-human, or are you spending the money with organizations that are aligned with the movement? This is a very small thing to do, that could have a massive impact.
Right. Right, because that's politics, right? I mean, it's politics by asymmetric means. All it takes for Liz Cheney to no longer be relevant is that the people of
Wyoming
threw
her out.
Say we don't want you no more. You've lost our support. Same thing would happen with these companies. Now the argument would be, and Milton Friedman. Again, I've referenced Milton Friedman because I do like him, and I've been listening to a lot of what he said recently. But now he would say that there's nothing wrong with monopolies. It's for the people to decide. It's for the people to step up and decide that they don't want the monopoly, that the monopoly isn't offering the service that it should, that satisfies the customer. Now, in that libertarian sense of the free market and free enterprise, it assumes, and I think wrongly assumes, that the markets and the services, the goods and services, the quality of goods and services or products will ultimately bend towards the arc of the goodness and the human will.
Unless your primary customer is the government.
That, or unless your populace has no sacred honor. And then the goods and services will bend towards the arc of a loss of righteousness, which then the monopoly not only has a monopoly, it has a monopoly that's taking you in a bad direction, which is what technology is doing, in my opinion, right? And there is a monopoly that technology as a whole has over our society. Technology itself is going to continue to be able to make things easier to build, to buy, to broker, to whatever the case may be. The net positive, the net advance is going to be convenience. And so how do people fight that? I mean, for us to all rise up and say, hey, we're not going to give our money to Walmart anymore. That's going to displace a lot of people because we've let Walmart get to where they are. And we should have thought about that 2 generations ago, and nobody was teaching that in the schools. American Civic should be teaching, hey, as a consumer, you got to be watching for monopolies. You got to be watching for companies that are getting too big, and ask yourself, if a company gets too big, does it become too big to fail, and is that good for you and your community and your family and your,
This speaks to the corruption of the political class to the max.
Yeah.
I was doing some research I was alluding to on the last podcast about the Sudan, and you start pulling on the threads, the threads there. And I found a representative who was speaking out in defense of the children who are in this famine in the Sudan, and her name is Jacobs, Representative Jacobs from California. And I researched her, and it turned out her grandfather is a man named Irwin Jacobs, who started a business called Qualcomm. Qualcomm is one of our very few domestic semiconductor manufacturers. So here's one of our most important corporations, huge business with the U.S. government, a core of the technology sector, and granddaughter is in the U.S. House of Representatives. She's going to take votes and make votes that are preferential to the family business. I think if we started pulling on these threads, we'd find of those 535 members in the Congress, I think a lot of them are bearing that kind of moral ambiguity. How do you take a vote when you become the beneficiary of the outcome of the legislation?
Right.
Well, how do we change that? This is what they don't teach in civics. The government is set up for the people to run the government. The only reason these assholes are in there is because we're not, and we're trying.
Because we're jerk-offs.
Hey, not you and me.
Yeah. What do you mean we? Yeah,
we're trying our
we
asses.
the people, though.
We need a revolution.
But we could say it until we're blue in the face. I mean, the real thing that comes down to it, guys out there in the audience, I'm just going to tell you, the professor and I, we're doing it for our own salvation. I hope you understand what I mean now when I said that.
I'm doing it for the same reason.
I'm doing it for my own salvation at this point because, I mean, who am I? I mean, JFK told you, Martin Luther King told you, I can name a bunch of, Jesus Christ told you. I mean, no, I mean, I couldn't do a better job than Christ. I damn sure couldn't do a better job than the apostles, Peter, Paul, St. John the Baptist. The list goes on and on. David, Moses, I couldn't do a better job than them. So it's at a level, it starts to feel like I'm just talking into the void. But you do get those, those affirmations. Like I run into people all the time now because I'm at the basketball games with the high school, and somebody will walk up to me and tap me on the shoulder. Never met him before. And I voted for you. Hey, I voted for you. Hey, you don't know me, but I know you. I voted for you. Please run again. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep saying what you're saying. We need you. You should have won. You know what I mean? And it's just like, and it's funny in the basketball world because, the basketball world in Minnesota is heavily dominated by what you would say is a sort of soft liberal crowd, right? People, men who have families and a lot of their wives, kind of dominate the household in many ways. It's not a, particular phenomenon in Minnesota. It's just kind of nationwide. But the point is, people who are very involved in sports usually take their politics with French fries because sports has become the dominant cultural piece, right? So, you would think that, like, for example, I have people online on social media who will be staunchly opposed to me in every way. I mean, they'll be public about it. People I knew, people I might have grown up with, and they're just like, Royce is stupid, he's crazy, I can't believe he's doing all of this crazy Trump stuff, blah, blah, blah. And then I'll get to a game where, like, the both of us would probably be at the same time. And I have way more people come up to me and say that they voted for me and that they like what I was saying. Like even my grandfather, right? My grandfather, Frank White, who I love, and he is greatly responsible for the man that I am. I tell people all the time, I used to remember we'd be coming home from games, he'd be refereeing, and he'd take me to go with him to go referee. He's a Hall of Fame referee in the state of Minnesota. Now he helps with he's on the board for Minnesota High School League if he hasn't retired already, and is an evaluator for other officials, and he's on the Mr. Basketball, evaluator. So he's a fixture of the Minnesota sports community, right? And I'm at all these high school varsity games, and I'll get referees come up, and they're like, your dad, I know your dad, and I'm like, it's my grandpa. And they're like, yeah, your grandpa. But anyway, he was very opposed to my politics.
I remember.
Even recently, right? Mother Jones did this huge article. They interviewed him, and he was like, he doesn't agree with my politics and whatnot. But so many of his friends from the neighborhood, so many of his friends from the reffing community, so many of his friends that come from all across the state of Minnesota, because the reffing community is a really statewide community, right? You get refs from the Twin Cities that go all the way up to Moorhead to ref a D2 collegiate game. You got refs that are all the way up there in Moorhead come down here to the cities to ref some games. So it's funny to get to experience all the support that I get from them. And I only say that to go back to my point about politics in general and me doing it for myself is I'm no better of a preacher than anybody else. We do have small victories, but at the end of the day, everybody knows what the fuck needs to happen. Everybody knows. It's just a matter of if we want to do it and if we're willing to do it. And as I keep saying, one of the most profound quotes, Carl Jung might have been a Satanist, I'm not sure, but he's a weird guy, right? And you come under Freud, you're going to be a little weird. Freud's understudy, you're going to end up being weird by osmosis.
He diverged.
He diverged, right? But he still in the scientific method mentality, which kind of weeds back down to a little Satanism, in my opinion. Regardless, the quote still stands. The truth is the truth. The thing we usually need to do is usually the thing we need the most is usually hidden in the place we least want to go, right? And it's just profound because it's like an axiom of the human condition. It's like that thing we really need to do, we really don't want to do. And that's a cultural-wide thing right now. In
Species-wide.
Species-wide, but really in America, because we've swelled this materialism to the point where it's like we can't get off of it. This is too good. Technology's too good. It's getting better. You mean I don't even have to go and select my content anymore? You mean the algorithm's going to give me everything that I would want to see without me even having to go search it? It's like I'm on Netflix and Netflix recommends a movie and it gets pretty damn close to something I would probably want to watch. And it's just like, this shit's pretty good, until the government comes and knocks on your fucking door and they're like, hey, we got a national emergency here and you're going to have to come with us. And the FEMA camps are the only place we can secure you from now on. And that's usually like, that's the gulag, right? That Solzhenitsyn is like when the shit goes haywire, you'd be surprised how quick it goes haywire. I know because I lived it. He's like, we were living in Russia. Things were on the edge, but they seemed like they were reasonably okay. And then all of a sudden, shit, I'm in the gulag. And it's like, fuck, what the fuck? We're in a gulag, you know? And it's just like, there's so many people who I walk by on a daily basis, and I just kind of think, you know, you don't know them from Adam. Sometimes don't even speak to them, but I just watch people, like whether I'm driving, and I just look over to pull up to a light, car next to me, and I just think, does that person have any thought whatsoever about what it would be like if shit went all the way bad and we ended up in a gulag tomorrow? Is that even in their purview?
No.
And that's the problem.
Because if it was in their purview, they'd be going to caucus in 2026.
There you go.
And taking over the Republican Party
That's
in
right.
Minnesota.
That's
which
right.
Every time.
Which is like, damn, you can't. I mean, we're not asking that much of you.
3 hours a year.
I mean, damn.
3 hours a year.
It's like, you know, we kind of dramatize and philosophize these things like sacred honor and national honor.
No.
Steve Bannon calls it American Dharma, or, you know, your civic duty. We're not asking you to die for the country.
3 hours a year. 3 hours a year. Caucus is going to come in February 2026. If you're in Minnesota, you want to change the entire course of history, change the arc of history. Get in touch with us here at Free People. We'll help train you, teach you everything. Because, of course, the Republican Party runs its business like a secret society. They don't want you as an American citizen to know how to do politics, which is simple. Just show up. All you got to do is show the fuck up.
You'd be surprised.
Vote.
You're surprised. It's quite shocking. It's quite shocking to see how taken aback the establishment is when people show up. Like at the convention, for example, right? And now, you know, the word is out. Royce is running again. Right now, they're trying to figure out who are we going to get. There's only two ways we can go about stopping Royce in 2026. We got to come up with the greatest smear campaign of all time.
Okay, A and B.
Or B, we got
to come up with an even better smear campaign.
Or we got to find somebody who is better, which is a tall order. I mean, it really is, because I'm not bullshitting. And most people who would even do politics are bullshitters, right? And it's hard to put a bullshitter up against a non-bullshitter. I mean, that's just kind of a bad matchup, as we would say in basketball. That's a mismatch. So, but the word is out. It's like, we can't let Royce be the candidate again in 26. And it just harkens, even this, you know, with the chair, you know, with the chair.
Plekish?
Yeah, with the Plekish selection and whatnot. The point is, you and I know, we'll talk about this on another episode. The first HEBROES episode on the HEBROES channel will be Minnesota Republican Party. How about we do that? And we'll go through this.
Can we do it tomorrow?
But the thing is you and I both witnessed how the establishment had to eat crow in real time as somebody who really wanted to speak the truth got up there in front of a crowd that was leaning towards Donald Trump in a way that they hadn't been able to really predict. So there is a level of as big as the establishment gets.
They know we're out there now.
They know we're there now.
Oh, this is a problem.
As big as the establishment gets, as big as the monopolies get, as big as the enemy seems, there are always weaknesses. And in our society, America at least, in the way our government is structured and runs, we do always have the chance to rise up. But people got to rise up. And right now, we might have to rise up. We're going to have to push back on Donald Trump. Even.
We are.
God bless him.
Steve.
God bless him.
You know, we like converts. I love that clip. We like converts.
Yeah.
But when you convert, you got to sit in the back of the church and learn the faith.
That was about Elon, not
I
about
know,
Donald
but it
Trump.
was the same. That was it was a derivative. It was a derived, you know.
Yeah, he wasn't talking about Donald Trump.
No,
he was talking
wasn't.
about Elon.
But you know what he was saying was, let's get our ideological framework set.
Right.
Let's not be wandering around in here.
Right.
And here's what he said at the end. You'll never beat us because we believe in something.
Amen.
Okay, and that's what we're going to be doing here on HEBROES. We want, whatever state you're in, but we want to have 100,000 Minnesotans watching HEBROES because we're a political action community. We're not doing this. Well, we want to be entertaining. We weren't really funny today. We'd like to be funny. We like to give some entertainment.
I was funny.
Okay, fine. Ha ha.
That was funny. I'm always funny.
That's great.
What you mean we?
What you mean we white man? The idea is what you said is you're doing it for your own salvation.
Yeah.
Let me just tell everyone how this works. When you're a Republican, not the Republican as in the party, but as a Republican, as a philosophy of life, the cornerstone of which is telling the truth, you've already nailed one of the fundamentals towards salvation, which is being honest. So what Royce said was, and I want to second this, when honesty goes up against dishonesty, character assassination, this use of the family issue, no, people have families. It's got nothing to do with politics. I want to lay this out right now. My personal life has nothing to do with my professional and political life. Nothing. I'm here as a republicanism adherent, the philosophy of republicanism. Wherever I fall short personally, I'm no different than you are. You fall short personally also. But when we come into this public space and we are adherents of republicanism, we believe in telling the truth. We believe in unalienable rights. We believe in protecting the rights of minorities. We believe in being the sovereign of our own life. We have a set of philosophical ideas that we're sharing together as a community. I really don't care what you did in your personal life 10 years ago. It's none of my business. If you want to share it with me, I might listen, but I'm really not that interested. I'm interested in what are you doing today politically to restore the Republican philosophy in the United States of America. That's what we're working on.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
We're going to have to put together, we're going to be going all over the state of Minnesota. We're going to be having meetings.
Yep.
We want people to find us. We want to be effective, right?
Americans.
We're supposed to self-govern, aren't we, after all?
I think so.
Didn't the framers give us that?
I think so. I like that way better than the other way. The other way is you can go live in China under President Xi, and, you can have a social credit score and have your government surveil you day and night, and even when you sleep.
And when you step out of line, you can't get on a train. You can't get on a plane. Yeah. Your card doesn't work when you stick it in to get some money at the ATM. This is not the kind of world. This Chrystia Freeland she just resigned up in Canada. Mm-hmm. When those truckers were protesting up there, she conspired with the banking system. They deplatformed the protesters.
The truckers.
And took their insurance away from them.
Of course.
Come on.
Yeah. That's just straight up tyranny.
Well, just north of the border.
Well, it's been another episode of Please Call Me Crazy, or HEBROES, the final HEBROES episode on Please Call Me Crazy. HEBROES is now moving to the HEBROES YouTube channel. We'll do a HEBROES next week. We'll let you know the day. I think we should do Thursdays. I think we should do HEBROES right after
the Professor Penn podcast.
Professor Penn podcast on Thursday evenings.
3 hours of Professor Penn on Thursday nights.
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah. I want them to listen to the professor all by himself, and then go listen to the professor and the kid afterwards. So maybe we'll do Thursday. We'll let you know. We'll let you know next week. You follow me on X, or you follow me on Getter or social media somewhere. I'll announce.
I want to thank everybody for all of your support and for being part of this community, and wish all of you a happy and healthy new year. And that's really important.
Please go subscribe to the HEBROES channel when you see it. We want you to subscribe to all the channels, like all the videos, comment on all the videos. Now, part of this is me and the professor here. We kind of have a theory going that YouTube might be shadow banning us. And our growth would seem to indicate that, especially juxtaposed to all of the feedback we get about the content. Usually when people see the content podcasts like this, they say, man, you guys had a great conversation. It was in depth. It touched on so many things, and it was actually enlightening and actually, worthwhile to listen to. But yet the growth doesn't suggest the same thing. Maybe we're just YouTube illiterate. Maybe we're stupid. Maybe our thumbnails suck and we don't know how to title or tag these things. We're going to find out now.
We're focused on it this year.
We're focused on finding out this year. So help us by making sure that you subscribe, like, comment, share the video with your people who have like mind or not even. And we want to drive the traffic up, and we want to get this out to as many people as possible. Part of getting it out to as many people as possible is to drive the traffic up, so it starts to snowball on its own and have that viral effect. We're tired of being the boutique shop of podcasts. We want to be up there with the big boys, because I think we have conversations here that are on par, if not much better and much more quality than some of the biggest podcasts out there. I don't say that to be, rude or insulting. I just mean put me and Professor Penn up against anybody out there, and I mean anybody. There's a reason why Steve supports me and is, kind of chosen me to be a voice in the movement. And he, like he says, and I'm very appreciative, I'm all signal, no noise. I only associate with people who are very similar. Professor Penn, even more so than me, all signal, no noise. If you watch his podcast solo, you're real signal, no noise. I mean, no noise. Me, I give a fuck you, a fuck off every now and then because, I come from a colorful neighborhood, But yeah, so we appreciate you guys. Make sure that you stay tuned for tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Eastern, Real America's Voice, the Royce White Show, right before War Room with Steve Bannon. Next week, podcast format still the same. Monday, 9 p.m., Professor Penn. Tuesday, 7:30 p.m. Central. Wednesday, we're going to do another reaction show. Myself and Tanner ironed out some details from this first episode this week. So we're smoothing that out, and it's going to continue to be a good one. Friday next week, I'm going to try and get another guest on. I haven't had an actual guest on that I interviewed for a long time because you and I usually do HEBROES on Friday. We'll do HEBROES Thursday. I'll do my guest episode Friday. Saturday, we'll be back again with Real America's Voice.
Got a Thursday Professor Penn podcast.
Thursday, Professor Penn, 7:30.
Tuesdays and Thursdays, Professor Penn.
Yep.
We got
Monday,
HEBROES.
Wednesday, Friday.
Please call me crazy.
Thursday, HEBROES.
Holy moly.
Saturday morning, Real
we
America's
need your support.
Voice.
We got to keep this thing growing and
we
going.
We got to keep it going. And then on Sunday, we got the Sunday call-in show coming very soon. Make sure that you stay tuned and contact us if you want to be a regular caller or guest on the call-in show. It's going to be very open-ended. The Sunday call-in show isn't going to be politics. It isn't going to be
it's whatever.
Any one thing. Is going to be anything, relationships, sports. It could be history, art, music, whatever it is. It's going to be about an hour and a half of just call-in. So that's coming on Sundays. We got a lot going on here at Free People Radio. We appreciate your viewership and listenership today and in the future. The fight continues as always. Godspeed. Thanks for being here, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Everything's up on the bar. We're all in. We get to decide. Do you want to live on your knees, or do you want to die on your feet fighting? That's the decision you get to make now.